Hey guys, welcome to the Rubin Report. I have Jaclyn Glenn, Hank Chen. I am Dave Rubin for the purposes of the show today. That kind of rhymed, isn't that fun? People love rhyming. Okay, let's get to it. So the Democrats have all been pretending that they're poor. And I'm not just talking about the regular Democrats. I'm talking about the power people, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden in particular. Hillary, of course, is going to run in 2016. Biden may run, which I think would kind of be fun in a Naked Gun way, but also kind of scary. So we did this 2 weeks ago, Hillary talking about how poor she is, and she was. So we've got two clips on her and one on Biden. So let's watch Hillary talking about her struggles.
It has been reported you've made $5 million making speeches. The president's made more than $100 million.
Well, if you have no reason to remember, but we came out of the White House not only dead broke, but in debt. We had no money when we got there, and we struggled to, piece together the resources for mortgages, for houses, for Chelsea's education. It was not easy.
Okay, that's utter nonsense and total bullshit. So basically, she's saying we came in with nothing. Not true. I mean, they had money. He was the governor of Arkansas, Bill. And then they left completely broke. They needed money for houses. Houses. How many houses do you have? So I'm pretty sure they're doing okay. I'm pretty sure there's no restaurant that they've ever been turned away from. But she continued.
First of all, we had to pay off all our debts, which was, you had to make double the money because of, obviously, taxes, and then pay off the debts and get us houses and take care of family members.
But do you think Americans are going to understand 5 times the median income in this country for one speech?
Well, let me put it this way. I thought making speeches for money was a much better thing than getting connected with any one group or company, as so many people who leave public life do.
Because she's so much better than those people who take money from one. She did take $400,000 to do 2 speeches from Goldman Sachs. And I'm not begrudging her any of this. You're allowed to make money. This is America. That's great. But don't pretend that you have no money nor access to making money in the future. And then Joe Biden, here we go.
Now, the first thing I was going to say is, look at Biden, man. He's got a mildly expensive suit on. He's Vice President of the United States of America. He makes, notwithstanding he's listed as the poorest man in Congress, he still makes a lot of money as Vice President of the United States, and I do, by the way. I do. Don't hold it against me that I don't own a single stock or bond. Don't hold it, I have no savings account. But I got a great pension and I got a good salary. And for real.
I mean, I'm telling you, his presidency would be Frank Drebin from Naked Gun. Okay, he is flat out lying. He does have a savings account, and he does have 11 investment funds. They're in his wife's name. So yes, technically, I suppose he's not lying, but he's lying. So, where I want to start with this, I don't begrudge these guys' success. I want people to be running the country that know how to do their finances, so hopefully they can help the finances of the country. What is the fascination with pretending they're poor and struggling?
They want to relate to the American people because, they feel like that's going to help them get elected and, increase their approval ratings and stuff. But I don't understand why it's so hard to be like, I wasn't always as successful, but now I've done better. Hillary could have said that. I mean, I know that she was being asked questions, so I kind of view her situation a little bit differently than Biden, because Biden's just, no one's asking him anything. He's just like, I don't have a savings account. And, it's just kind of like ridiculous. And like you said, it's a flat out lie. Why can't they, be honest and say, I can relate because I was once in that position. Now I've come out of that. But to sit there and lie is not going to help.
Right. Now, Biden did say one thing that was true, which is that he was, when he was in the Senate, he was the poorest member in terms of having money in the Senate. But, like, why? So he blatantly lies there. What should we do about a lie? A politician lying? I can't believe it.
Well, we call their asses out, like what you're doing here. I mean, this is... they overreacted just like Charlize Theron feeling raped by the paparazzi and Goop feeling like she's at war. This is their attempt at trying to relate to the American people, and it's completely backfiring. And by the way, I'm going to do an impression of Diane Sawyer in that clip, which is this. She looked like she was about to slap the shit out of Hillary, because she's sitting here thinking, you've got to be kidding me. I know what my salary is, and yours is definitely higher. And
but Hillary has to pay for taxes and her daughter's education.
Yeah.
And,
by the way,
family expenses and their houses.
The houses.
Houses.
By the way, you know,
like jewelry.
Chelsea Clinton was also, you know, just a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, given a $600,000 a year job at NBC News, despite the fact that she wasn't qualified at all and was pretty terrible, and they basically paid her to do like 3 appearances. Ridiculous. So that's pretty sweet. Why do we have success shame, do you think? Because that's what this seems to me. I get it, they want to relate to everybody, but we seem to have this real thing where we're ashamed of wanting to be successful or actually being successful.
I think it's a carryover from the last election. I think Romney got so much flack for is that whatever the word is, having so much money that he lost an election. He was seen as unrelatable and out of touch. But you know what, to Hillary's credit, you know, like at the end of the month, guys, when like you paid your rent, you've paid the bills, you're waiting for like the checks to come in, that's when your account is kind of in flux. I'll bet you, with the Clintons, I'll bet you, their accounts are in flux by millions and millions of dollars, and there's always that one day in the month where it might be negative 10 million, like Hillary talked about. But of course, she has yet to cash the rest of the checks, and so she's trying to relate with just that, oh God, the 30th of every month, I'm dead broke.
I think that's probably it. There is probably some truth to that they had debt. By the way, her campaign, which in 2008 ran into debt, she had donors pay off her campaign's debt.
T-shirts, $70 T-shirts.
Were they $70?
They were high. They were up there, especially after she lost because they were collector's items, souvenirs.
So the reason I'm doing this segment is because it seems to me that we're always attacking Republicans about money, but I want everyone to know that the Democrats are just as bad. Do you think that's a fair estimation?
I mean, I do think it's fair. I mean, I feel like they're trying too hard to be relatable because they feel like that's so important. Mm-hmm. But to be ashamed of success is really ridiculous. And I think the reason why they're doing that is because people make them in a position where being successful could be viewed as a negative trait in a politician because, oh, they'll never be able to relate to me because they have all this money and I'm struggling financially. Why would they try to go out of their way to help me if they can't relate more? But to flat out lie isn't helping. And for people to even have that attitude in society that success is a negative thing is ridiculous. I can think of hundreds and hundreds of politicians who are a contradiction to that. I mean, no one thinks about the Senate or the House of Representatives, all these people who are making a shit ton of money, and no one ever says anything about them because all they can see are the president and the vice president and these people who are so much in the public eye. But they're not the only people in politics, and they're not the only people making a lot of money. And George Bush, W. Bush, he had a ton of money, with his connections to oil and stuff, and no one ever complained about that because they were like, oh, Texas and America, and he can relate to people.
We complain, the Democrats complain.
And he was pretty much an idiot, and no one cared, or a lot of people, whenever he was being elected, didn't care because they were like, oh, he's so relatable to us, Texas and
he
guns
seemed more like a Texas, like a guy, and he knew how to throw a baseball. Remember, he threw that first pitch out, and he threw a strike.
That's really important to being a president. But I mean, most people who reach the level of education that you would hope that they would have in order to be holding public office like that, they're going to be in a position where they're making money because they've reached a level of success that other people haven't.
Right. Would you rather have someone in office who has no idea how to handle their personal finances and is in debt? You know what I mean? If you knew that the guy that was coming into president, he really fucked up his financial situation, you know what I mean? He's got creditors calling him. That's what they somehow want this. That's what she's saying. Like, we had nothing. But I would never want that person to be president, right?
It's sad that they think that that's the relatable candidate, though. They're like, oh, we must, reach out to the millions of Americans who are in debt and have creditors chasing after them in order to get their vote. Yeah. Tragic.
Last thought on this, the lying part, just the flat-out lying, which is what they're both doing. And I get it, Hillary's doing it a little bit less because she's sort of mincing words and maybe debt and whatever. But he's flat-out lying because it's his wife that owns the stuff, and that's a lie. So does that matter even? Does anyone even care when they get caught?
I mean, I don't know how much he cares, but he should. Yeah. Because, I mean, at least for me, I'm not going to trust somebody. I mean, how many people trust politicians anyways? Yeah. But, I mean, for him to sit there and say, it's my wife's money, not mine. I mean, look at me. I'm so poor. I don't have a savings account. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Does the lying matter to you, or do you just expect it?
I think it comes with the territory, unfortunately. I think they're going to pass it off as, just politics. They told a little bit of a fib, or it's sort of like the dinner party conversation where you just say something to relate to the person next to you just to make them feel a little bit better. Yeah. And I don't honestly think it's going to hurt them whatsoever. Their charm and personality and celebrity status is going to get them to the next level.
Yeah, well, sadly, I agree with you. They have more money than you, which is okay, but you know what? They're liars, so vote them all out. How about that? All right, let's move on. So this is crazy. You would think this is happening in a third world country, but no, it's happening here in America, although we're on our way to becoming a third world country. They are going to start shutting off water to citizens of Detroit because people are behind on their payments, because obviously we got a major bad economic situation going on in Detroit right now. There is a $118 million debt in the Detroit Water and Sewage Department. That's what they have. So every week they're going to shut off water supplies to 3,000 people, which will lead to about 150,000 people in total. We've got a little more info for you. So nearly half of the 320,000 residents who use the utility are delinquent, so they're just not paying their bills anymore. And Detroit's average monthly water bill is nearly double the national average of $40, and the Detroit City Council approved a 9% hike last week. So they're increasing what the water costs at the same time as they have this tremendous amount of people that can't afford it. And we've got a quote from a member of the coalition in charge of this operation. We are asking the UN Special Rapporteur to make clear to the US government that it has violated the human right to water. If the US government does not respond appropriately, this will also impact their universal periodic review when they stand before the Human Rights Council to have their human rights record evaluated. That's Maud Barlow. She's the national chairperson of the Council of Canadians. So obviously, Detroit, Canada, they're close to each other, so this is a board that's dealing with some of these issues. And they want the UN to come in and help Americans get water. So I guess the most basic thing here is we need to just give these people free water, right?
Absolutely.
Like, we got to suck it up and let our own citizens have water.
This is
Fair
not
to
a
say?
third world country. Yeah. What is going on that we're at a point where we are questioning whether or not to give people water?
Withholding it, yeah.
What
I mean, it's
what the
Canadian
hell?
water, too. You saw that Council of Canadians. It's Niagara water. They have a lot of it.
There's plenty,
Yeah.
right, there's plenty. Okay, so somebody, I'm watching
joke.
this and I'm sure, somebody's watching this and going, well, you know what, if these people can't afford their water, then they don't deserve their
I have
water.
seen
So
many
what would
people-
you say to those people?
I would like those people to go a few days without water and let me know how it works out for them. I
Yeah.
mean, this is not something that is, something people can't have. Like, oh, this is cable TV. They're not paying their cable bill. We're going to cut off their cable. This is something that they need to survive. This is a human rights issue. There are people who are on life support in homes connected to machines, and it is illegal to cut off their electricity because they need that to survive. People need water to survive. And what is the alternative? They're going to get sick. They're going to get dehydrated. Then they're going to go to the hospitals. We're going to have to pay for that. Where are they going to flush the toilets? I mean, the sanitation was going to throw it in the streets like we used to.
Right.
I mean, then there's going to be diseases, and this is going to be a problem that affects everyone. How is it even logical to want to take that road? It's going to cost more money.
The government not doing something logical, I can't believe it.
Shocking.
But right, so you're onto something there, because if you do shut off the water to these people, the amount of disease that's going to increase, I mean, it's a short-term financial answer to what will then lead to a much bigger socioeconomic and health problem and all that.
Yeah.
What do we do?
I mean, I think for right now, I think we have to, this is one of those issues that really has to be taken one day, 1 week, 1 month at a time, because we're talking about something that's so vital to human survival.
Yeah.
And right now, listen, Detroit, if you can't get your shit together and you can't afford water, get Obama to pay for it. Get the government. I pay taxes. I'm happy to contribute to keep my fellow brethren alive. And while you're at it, you can pay for my water bill too, because it is expensive. And if you have a low-wage job, $80 a month is a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, I can afford it, thankfully. However, I can understand that it is a struggle, because believe it or not, I was once there, where I was from gig to gig to gig, and your bills, it's hard to keep that all in check at the end of every month. So.
Yeah, I mean, as a comic, I know about being behind on the bills.
Yeah.
How important do you guys think it is that we keep Detroit going? Because remember, during the election, they kept saying, Biden kept saying, Bin Laden is dead and GM is alive, you know, implying that Detroit is alive. But now we keep hearing about all this bad stuff in Detroit.
We want to annex it, give it Canada?
Maybe they want it. I don't think they'd want it, actually. But how important is it that we keep this Detroit going? Because it's it seems to me that it's like the ground zero of what could really start spreading across the country if we shut off water to Detroit or we don't help it come back economically and all that.
That's a slippery slope, man. I'm all for leave no man behind, because then what? Are we going to annex New Orleans? Are we going to start just picking territories that we don't like and getting rid of them?
Yeah.
It's that we are Americans.
Annex means take them in. I think you mean reverse annex.
Oh my God! See,
This
is why you host the show and I don't.
Annex would be if we welcome them in.
Yeah, we're not doing
annex
that.
them.
No, we're definitely not
if
doing
Canada
that.
took Detroit, they'd be annexing. We should convince Canada.
We'll be
to do
editing
that.
this segment out.
Yeah.
Where is the pride that comes along with like having people part of our country? I mean, that is part of our country. Those are Americans.
Yes.
How could we consider taking their water away? And why is that the first thing that pops into people's minds? They can't pay their bills, so we should take away their water. Like maybe the idea of creating jobs or thinking of something that would economically help the area grow. Like that's not something that people immediately think of. The first thought that most people commented on this was, cut it off. If they can't pay it, they can't expect me to pay it. I'm their neighbor. And it's just like, really?
Yeah. Look at you. You're such a socialist, wanting water for everybody.
Everyone,
I'm voting for Jaclyn.
By the way,
for
what
president.
percentage of our bodies is water?
Like 80 or something high.
80 or something percentage of your body is water. So let's just give water to people that can't afford it. We can't do that much, right? But I'm pretty sure we could try to do that.
That could be off. I have no idea. That was my.
It's roughly 80%.
It's right around there. Yeah.
Drink water, people.
We're all in
It's
the
good.
same boat.
It's good for you. Okay, let's move on. A Dutch company has invented the world's first electronic joint. That's right. Dutch manufacturers EN Joint claim that the e-spliff is totally harmless, contains no tobacco, nicotine, or even THC. So just to be clear, what's going on here is the THC, that's the part that's sort of the mental high that's going to make you laugh and all that. But the stuff that has the medicinal benefits is not. So you can get the medicinal benefits without having the other part of it. We've got an image of the joint, the EN joint. It looks like an e-cigarette basically, but nice marijuana leaf, so you know what you're doing there, not to confuse you. It's got the shape of real joint, obviously. A chrome-plated tip where the cannabis leaf lights up with every puff. It's available in 6 fruit flavors, and there are currently 10,000 of these things sold every day in Europe. And they want to get it, of course, to Amsterdam, where weed is already legal. Although they've been taking back some of their rights on that. Pretty good, right? This seems all good. We got no problem with weed at this table, I hope.
I mean, no.
I'm surprised. First of all, way to innovate the Dutch. They're the ones that that started to tax prostitutes. They're like, hey, if there's a supply or if there's a demand, let's supply it, and that's what they're doing here. I'm surprised that there's only 6 flavors.
The prostitutes literally have a union. They're in a union, and they have to go for STD testing every so often and all that. And then the government makes money off it. So this could be another example of that. So if you took the mental high and this was just medicinal, is there anything wrong with this at any level that you can think of?
But I don't think there's anything wrong with just smoking weed anyways. But I mean, like, I could see the benefit to this if there's like a child or something, that would need the medical benefits of something without getting high. Obviously, you don't want to be like, oh, here, little Johnny, take this weed and smoke it. But if it helps them, really pain, then I totally agree with that. But whenever I first read this article, to be honest, like, I kind of laughed a little bit. I'm like, okay, so it's got no nicotine, it's got no tobacco, it's got no THC, but it's got like this marijuana leaf on it, and people are like getting all excited about it. People are like, oh, look at this awesome new thing. And I'm like, well, first of all, I've seen electronic joints for a long time, so this isn't like something that was new or shocking to me.
Right.
But the fact that they're able to take out all of those things and use it for purely medicinal purposes is exciting. So that's a good thing.
Do we need this in America? Or do we just need to get it legalized, period, the way it's going from state to state right now?
Exactly.
We should just legalize, period.
It's like, I mean, they're taxing prostitution and stuff. Why don't we tax marijuana? I mean, that would help so many things.
Yeah. Detroit, take some notes off of Amsterdam. They're real innovative, Find new business ventures to invest in.
They're cutting off water in Detroit, as we did in the other segment, where maybe a little weed profiteering might be good for them.
Or taxing the hookers. There's a lot in Detroit.
Yeah. What do you make of the people that I can, at some level, even though I don't agree with them, I can somehow get the people that don't want people to be stoned because they're going to be stupid in driving. I don't agree with it, and there's nothing true about it. But what about the people that are still saying no for medicinal purposes?
I saw that too. They thought it was a gateway. Everything is a gateway.
Everything's a gateway.
Everything's a damn. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Alcohol.
Baby food's a gateway to regular food.
Well, I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah.
It literally is.
Well, but everything's a gateway.
You
could take away weed, and then they would just, and something else would be, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't see it as
It's crazy, especially since there's nothing in this that would be addictive, that
Right.
would be a gateway to anything. What? It's not even going to get you high.
Yeah.
You know, it's like pretty much taking medicine.
So is it because Big Pharma is not behind this yet? Is that the idea? Because we love everything in pill form. So if there were medicinal benefits to this in this form, until Big Pharma is behind it, you know, we never get the marketing to get everyone ginned up for it, you know?
Maybe to a degree, just because people almost need to be convinced of things. Like, they think that, oh my God, it's got a marijuana leaf on it.
Yeah.
People have to feel
It's
like
like
they can
so-
profit off of it, I think. I think once you get a big company behind it, manufacturing it, just like big tobacco in the 80s and the 90s, and Pfizer and the other big drug companies, once you get a big corporation behind it who's, you know, donating money to major political campaigns, everyone's going to be back on board, especially as you guys are saying, there's no actual negative side effects to impair judgment, right? From what
That's what they're telling us, and if they're telling us, then we got to believe them.
Right.
Would that appeal to you to smoke something that you would get sort of none of the mental stuff of weed, but just get the physical stuff? You know, your shoulder hurts, you smoke that, you feel a little better instead of taking Advil or something.
If I had a choice, I probably would, you know, want the THC in there, but
You,
that's
you
just
take
me.
a little THC.
Yeah, the real stuff.
Could you maybe sprinkle it on top? I don't know how that works.
Powder
THC
form?
sprinkles, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be something else.
Inject some marijuanas.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Legalize it, for God's sakes, every week with the weed. Come on, kids. Okay. I think this is really fascinating. So, according to a survey released this week by Consumer Reports, the word natural on food products actually means nothing. Literally nothing. That's right. So, we've got some findings from the study. So 2/3 of Americans think that the word natural on the label of a packaged or processed food means that it contains no artificial ingredients, pesticides, or genetically engineered organisms. That is simply not true. When consumers see the word on meat or poultry, 70% think it means no growth hormones were used to get the animal in the animal's feed, and 60% think the animals got no antibiotics or other drugs in their feed. That is also not true. Both the FDA and the US Department of Agriculture allow food producers to use the word natural on labels as long as nothing artificial or synthetic has been added that would not normally be expected in the food under an informal policy the FDA put into place back in 1993. And the argument's been made that the prohibition of the word natural would restrict free speech. So we do a lot of stuff on this show about natural foods and GMOs and all the crazy additives and the sugars and high fructose corn syrup and all that. Jaclyn, I'm going to let you start here as someone with a little science behind you. We love words, right? We just love words. You throw natural on it, people think nature.
I mean, it says right there that it's just what you wouldn't already expect to be in the food. So if something unnatural is being added to your food, but it's something that they normally add, they're allowed to use the word natural and put that label on the food. And people, I'm sorry, but like, I do honestly think that they have the right to do that. People being gullible is not their fault. I mean, people exploit that type of thing all the time. Politicians do it, and marketers do it. So it's kind of up to the consumer to do a little bit of work and a little bit of research to figure out what is in their food and what is healthy and what's not. And the whole anti-GMO thing too, people get excited. They see non-GMO on a food and they'll buy it. I've seen non-GMO on salt. I mean, that's an inorganic compound. Like, there's no G to M because it's not an O.
Right.
So I don't understand. Like, people just, they see words that are pretty and they think that they're doing something good by going after that food. But,
right.
I mean,
So you're kind of giving the FDA a little leash here to fiddle around because you want it to ultimately come back to the people, and you have to make it.
I think it's manipulative, and I wish that it wouldn't happen. But I mean, that's the world that we live in. And as far as like the money is concerned, you have to follow the money. If this is going to make corporations more money, no one's going to stop them.
Yeah. So I'm sort of with you because I believe in the personal responsibility thing. But if this many people are getting duped, perhaps the FDA needs to do something more transparent.
To raise the standards. I heard, you tell me if this is correct or not. I heard that apparently there's a certain like percentage of insects that are allowed in peanut butter. It's like a 0.5 situation, just simply because of the quantity of mass production, that you have to allow that just margin of toxicity in your food.
Well, there's a certain amount of bone that's allowed to be in the McDonald's meat
and stuff because of just the volume, and so they have to permit that. But what I am shocked by is just how low the bar has been set, whereas like all natural is not, they're like, oh, this doesn't have formaldehyde and, you know, rat poison, so yes, it's all natural. It's about, instead of all natural being about what it is, it's now about what it's not. They're like, oh, well, it doesn't have tar in it, so all natural.
Right. Do you think so? If they changed it to be a little more honest, wouldn't the food companies just figure out other ways of manipulating people?
Yeah, and they do. I mean, that's not the only thing I've seen, as far as manipulation goes. I mean, I've seen people, who are concerned with animal rights give no mind to factory farming, because instead of factory farming, they say farm fresh. And technically it's a farm.
It's a farm,
so they can say farm fresh, and no one bats an eye at that. I mean, it's no secret that 50% of the antibiotics that are being used go into the food that you're consuming. And instead of marketing like that, they'll say, due to advanced farming techniques, we've taken advanced veterinary measures, and people see that and they're like, oh, that sounds great.
Right.
But they have no idea that it's saying we're pumping your food full of antibiotics.
Right. So is that part of it that, especially in America, because a lot of the stuff that we allow in our food in America is not allowed in Europe, is it part of it that we just love stamps on things? We love like a logo that says some, just some catchphrase, or authorized by or certified by, and we don't do any of the work to, when you go shopping, do you look for those things even if you're not even sure what they mean? Just the stamp on the thing that says...
It depends on what it is. I feel like I was raised to eat pretty healthy, and so I look for brown eggs. I look for, there's certain things that I do look at, but I feel like 90% of the grocery store contains all of these chemicals that the Smarties quoting. I don't remember, but how can you avoid it? I try to shop around the outside perimeter, get the fresh veggies and lettuce and what have you. But to answer your question though, I do believe that America is addicted to brands and labels, for sure. We're all, it's all about status. It's all about, I honestly, I think the whole vegan gluten-free movement really pushed that kind of obsession when it comes to one's own diet. Show up at a restaurant, I am gluten-free, and to just declare that to the restaurant so that everyone knows.
Yeah. Which actually, now there's been studies saying that most people, unless you have celiac disease, there's basically no such thing as being gluten intolerant. Well, I'm sure there'll be another study that'll reverse that next week. Anyway, so just be kind of a little more aware of what you're putting in your body, because this packaging clearly isn't telling you the truth. All right, let's move on. This is fascinating. So half of Americans don't want atheist in-laws and atheists in their family. This is really nuts. I have a feeling Jaclyn's gonna have a little something to say about this. A Pew Research Center poll asked Americans whether they would be disappointed if a close family member married someone of a different race, a different country, different political party, or someone who doesn't believe in God, the scariest of all things. Let's look at the study's findings. 49% of Americans said they would be disappointed if their family member married an atheist. That's half people. I cannot believe that. 73% of conservatives said they would be less than thrilled if a family member married an atheist. And nearly a quarter of Americans who call themselves consistently liberal, and 41% of mostly liberal respondents, said they wouldn't want an atheist to marry into their family. So that's the one I want to start with. A quarter of liberals, I mean, we're supposed to be the ones that are forward-thinking and open to other ideas, and 1 out of 4 liberals does not want you in their family. Jaclyn Glenn,
Sorry.
go.
I'm so horrible. I mean, I think it just goes along with the misconception that atheists have no morals, that we're not good people. I mean, none of those numbers surprised me, because I've been around this for a long time. I know how distrusted, we're like the most distrusted group of people in this country.
There's many studies that say that people distrust.
I mean, there was a study one time where they asked people if there was an abandoned car and it was, if somebody went through it and stole everything out of it, would you expect that this person was, A, B, C, and one of the options was like, rapist, murderer, atheist, and it's like, oh, definitely the atheist. That was the highest chosen answer, and it's like, really? I mean, whenever all these different studies are lined up, we are on par with rapists and murderers, as far as the lack of trust goes, and it's fascinating. And I think most of that's just because there's such a stigma behind it, because people think that you have to have religion to have morality or some sort of spirituality, and to say that you're on your own without that is very scary to a lot of people.
Yeah. So quick before I let you jump in, Hank. So how does an atheist get morals if not being handed down to them by the Lord?
Everyone has morals, and if you follow the morals handed down to you by the Lord, you'd end up in jail.
Right, a lot of eye for an eye kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, killing your kids and stuff, and there's actually, that's happening now. A lot of people with the faith healing and stuff, they're not getting their kids the medical treatment that they need, and whenever they're obviously repeat offenders because they let one kid die and then another kid dies, then they go to jail. The first one's okay. Yeah. But I mean, it's happening now. People are following the word of the Bible, and that's happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
so what do you make of the quarter of the liberals? Because that's the number here that the conservative thing. All right, I get it. Like if you're more conservative and you're more religious, then I can understand this. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it. A quarter of liberals, that's a lot.
I'd like to see how they broke down the word liberal, because liberal doesn't necessarily mean not religious.
No, it doesn't.
So a lot of liberals actually do still identify with some kind of faith, and I think people in general, it's human that you want to see yourself reflected in others, and those are the ones you gravitate more towards anyways. And because America is such a I would say has such a strong spiritual foundation that it just seeps into everyone's way of life. And so when they run into someone who completely rejects all of that, and we're talking not just Christianity, which I think is probably the most prevalent of religions here, but when they're like, wait a minute, you don't even believe in Oprah and energies of the universe and like and all of that, like that's weird. Like, why? Who did this to you?
Yeah,
Who are you?
what must have happened to you in your life to make you turn out so horrible?
Yeah.
I mean, I think another thing about this is like whenever you think about the word liberal, a lot of times whenever you identify as something, you expect that everyone in that category is like this awesome, open-minded, free-thinking person.
Right.
And I've learned the hard way that even within the atheist community, you can't expect all of them to be open-minded and free-thinking.
How interesting.
Yeah.
So there is discrimination even within the atheist community.
It's because you're human beings. Just because you're a liberal or a conservative or an atheist or a Christian or whatever, I mean, there's still those human tendencies that make certain people horrible. I mean, you can be a bad person and an atheist or a Christian or whatever.
Right.
There's bad people everywhere.
How much of this do you guys think has to do with tradition more than religion per se? Because I could see, I'm not religious per se, but I do like some of the traditions, like during Passover, I'll have a Seder. I like the tradition of it. It doesn't have a religious connotation to me, really. So I could see why someone would say, oh, I don't want someone coming into my family who's not going to care about the traditions more than the religion itself. Am I a bit of a jump or something there?
I mean, I can see that, yeah. I can see that being a thing, but I think most of it is just people are scared of atheists.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you sat there and said, I'm not religious, that would go over completely differently than saying I'm an atheist.
Right.
Like I've heard stories of people, saying that they're not religious or that they're not atheists, and the response is, well, I can understand you not believing in God, but an atheist? It's like,
I think they think atheists are like nihilists or something, like they have no belief system whatsoever. Is that
Well, I mean, maybe, but that's just a misconception.
Well, what is your personal definition? Why do you label yourself an atheist?
I don't believe in God.
Okay.
That's it. Like, that's all.
Plain and simple.
Yeah, he's looking at it.
We'll move over, Dave. Move over.
Lightning bolt's going to come down. We're going to figure out God is actually Thor.
Do you think we need more atheists to come out of the closet? I've talked about this a couple of times when we've done this before, that, even somebody like Barney Frank, who was open. No, well, so he was openly gay in the 80s in Congress.
Right.
I think he came out in like 1982 or 1983, had an incredibly proficient career, and then he didn't come out as an atheist until about a month after he resigned last year. So atheists are actually behind gay people in their exposure.
Stirring up the pot. So what you're trying to say, Dave, is that atheist rights are the new trans rights? Is what you're trying to say? We're
trans people are just getting their rights, but there's not even time for that. I'm sorry.
We're really pushing. I know.
Yeah, because we can just deal with one thing at a time in this country.
Exactly. To answer your question, yes, I think it's very important because I do believe that atheists are misrepresented and misunderstood in this country.
Yeah. I assume that you think more atheists need to, as someone that publicly is doing this all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a stigma, and I feel like the only way to get rid of that is to, say, hey, I'm a normal, happy, nice person, and I'm an atheist. It's not that hard.
It's not that hard. There you go. All right, we got one more for you, and this one I am very happy about, and we're going to file this under Pretty Damn Obvious. A new study by Gallup shows that people's faith in mainstream television news is at an all-time low. Let's look at some numbers on public faith in TV. So 10% now, 10%, 1 out of 10 people say they have a great deal of confidence in TV news. 8% say they have quite a lot of confidence. So what you can see here is that starting in 1993, there has just been a precipitous decline in the amount of people that believe in mainstream news. Something happened, they started this in 93, but there was a major drop to 93 to 94. I'm not exactly sure. You know what that might have something to do with, I wonder, is that O.J. Simpson. That's when cable news really went nuts. That was 1994. So maybe it has something to do with that when cable news and mainstream news got so sensational. Does any of this surprise? This seems good to me. As an online news guy, this seems all good to me because this is what I've been saying forever, and this is why I do what I do, because we can tell the truth here, and we don't have something in our ear with a network executive telling us what to say and teleprompters and all that. So are you guys on the bandwagon here that this is all good?
This is not surprising. I'll tell you right now, my family and every other Asian family lost their faith in '95 when CBS fired Connie Chung. Okay, they were done. They were out. So, but in all seriousness, in the last 20 years, you're right. It is the expansion. You know, when Al Gore invented the internet.
Yes. The tubes.
There was he opened up. The dialogues were opened up, and so you don't have your middle-aged white guy. No offense, you're not middle-aged or white.
I will be 38
you know, presenting you this information that you're supposed to just take at face value. Someone can tell you something, and then you can go elsewhere to read criticisms about it, to read other opinions, differing opinions, to read arguments about it, and then form your own. And I think it's this new generation of people that were raised just to be a little skeptical of authority. We're not going to just take the broadcast newscasters at face value.
Yeah. Do you think this is more because mainstream news just sucks, or because online news is good? Or maybe you don't agree with either of those.
Well, I think both. And I mean, I don't think it's surprising to anyone. It's not news to anyone that this news, people don't trust media. I mean, it's gone down a lot. But as far as the internet goes, that hasn't been a very well trusted media either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as low now. I think finally the TV news has dropped below the internet.
Right.
But the internet's never really been incredibly high either. And I mean, as far as newspapers goes, that's been
the people on the
most,
internet are high, but yeah.
I mean, like, newspapers are the most trusted, but the amount of circulation of like printing new newspapers and stuff, like, people aren't doing that anymore. It's gone down so much that they actually think it might not even be a thing in 5 to 10 years anymore. So I really think the internet is going to be the biggest form of media. And I mean, I know that there's a lot of troll websites and there's a lot of misinformation out there, and everybody knows anyone can go on Wikipedia and edit. And I think like part of that has kind of made people more distrustful of the internet. But I mean, there are so many different websites out there that you can go to that have, you know, researched and peer-reviewed articles. It just takes a little bit of work.
Right, so how do you do that? Because there is so much that's what I think is the interesting part. You know, you have 3 cable news channels, and one's working for the Democratic Party, one's working for the Republican Party, and I don't know what CNN's still looking for the plane. But what do you do, because there's so much information? How do you decide who to trust? It's tough, right?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, depending on what the issue is, I always read the differing opinions, as I was mentioning earlier, and I guess I bounce it off of my own moral compass, right? What do I believe in? What's important to me? And then I take from it what I will. I mean, unless, are you implying that the newscasters, like, you know, whomever is reading on the evening news is straight up lying to you?
Well, they're all owned by giant corporations.
Yeah,
and
selling ad dollars.
No, I was just going to say there's a very small group of people that control pretty much 90% of what you see on the news. So, I mean, I've actually seen different videos where people have lined up the introductory segments to different news shows, and they all say the same line. Like for Easter, they're like, "Oh, we're happy this year," but everyone says the same thing at the same time in the same year. But then and I saw a video where a lot of these were placed together, so it's almost like they're all scripted in a different way, and you know, like that's going to shake your confidence a lot because it's all planned out. They're all saying the same things, and even whenever they disagree, you kind of wonder, was that planned? Like,
right,
was that
and
also
I don't think there's necessarily like this secret cabal of 5 guys that are sitting in a room disseminating this information, because as Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I have no evidence of that, although it seems like it, but that's not evidence, right? Seeming is not evidence? That's not evidence.
Speculation.
Okay,
I wish, Dave. I wish.
But is there anyone in the mainstream news that when you watch, you trust them? I don't think they're sitting there lying. Like, I don't think people are necessarily like automatic. No, sometimes they do, for sure. I mean, you watch Chris Matthews on MSNBC, he's had every opinion about everything and discounts what he says the week before constantly. So yes, some of them are lying, but the rest of them I think are just, a lot of them they're just TV people who someone hands them something and they read it, and that's it. Is there anyone that you watch that you really, in mainstream news that you watch that you really feel like is telling the truth?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I get all my information from the internet, and if it's something that seems sketchy to me, I'll definitely look further into it.
Yeah.
You know, I use more than one source. and TV just does not seem like something that I would ever want to use.
You crazy atheist.
I know,
Using more
I know.
than one source. Jeez.
Something else she doesn't have faith in, okay, right, Dave Rubin? I'm just kidding.
It's the lack of morals.
It's the lack
Evil.
of work. Yeah, really. Who do you trust? Is there someone that you trust that we all know?
I take
Anderson Cooper. He's keeping them honest, isn't he?
He is. He's a good interviewer, and I don't think he's necessarily presenting information. I think he's just asking the hard questions with regards to whoever is prominent in the media. But
Yeah.
I take my news with a grain of salt. Is what I was going to say. I like Diane Sawyer. I like everyone in the Good Morning America team because they're fun, you know, and they're generally pretty lighthearted. If I want something serious hitting, you know, something, I will turn to a more credible, like, online newspaper or something with a more investigative angle.
And by the way, if you want an example of what you were talking about how it seems like they're all doing this in cahoots with each other, you know, net neutrality, which we and the Young Turks talk about constantly, which is really basically pretty much after the NSA, it's the most important thing that's happening in the country right now because we need equal access to the internet so that these giant corporations can't start throttling what you can and can't watch. The network news and even cable news barely covered it at all. We covered it here because it's important to us, but that's the whole point, because eventually they could start slowing it down for us, and then you'd only get your information from the very same people who aren't covering it
so filtered.
in the first place.
There are so many times I see something huge going on, you know, somebody being, you know, persecuted in another country for their lack of beliefs or different beliefs, and that's never on the news. The only time I ever get that information is because it's, you know, something that all my friends are posting about on Twitter, or, you know, it's like the information that I find to be incredibly important a lot of times is nowhere to be found on the news.
Do you guys happen to remember, maybe one of these guys remember also, when the whole thing was happening in Egypt in Tahrir Square?
Oh my God, yes.
And we were showing, but CNN all day was showing that fucking trial. Does anyone remember what trial that was? Anyone? There was some another trial, something bad happened.
Was it Pistorius?
No,
or was
I think
this
no, it was a
before?
woman. It was a woman that I'm sure killed somebody or something. And CNN was literally showing the trial. There is nothing more drivelous and minutia based than showing 8 hours of a trial. And CNN was showing Tahrir Square in a little box while they were showing the trial. And nothing happens in a trial all day long, and it's all bullshit anyway. Anywho, I hope you learned a little something here and that you felt we were being honest, because that's what we're trying to do. So I want to thank Jaclyn Glenn and Hank Chen. They are both big YouTubers, so check out their channels, which are right down below, and they're on Twitter and all that good stuff. And we will do it again next week. Thanks, guys.